Brief introductions. So my name's Will, sit on the product team here at QBS. Obviously for a lot of people, QBS is kind of that software procurement piece. The idea with some of our other technology stack is to just give you a little bit to differentiate. So we've got some up and coming technologies in the likes of LiveAction that really gives you the chance to offer something different. And the idea of today is we've got Luke on the call as well, who's the International Channel Director at LiveAction. And we're just going to give you a little bit of a high level taste into what LiveAction really is and where we think we can add value back. If you've got any questions, kind of put them in the chat and we'll work through them as we go through. But what I'll do now is I'll pass on to Luke, who's just going to give you a little bit of a presentation. And yeah, we'll go from there.
Thanks very much. So I'm just going to, I want to make sure I close down this webinar viewer. I hope it doesn't kill me out of it, but no. Okay, good. All right. So thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate everyone taking their lunch out to come and listen to me for the next, I think probably 30 minutes or so. So I know we've got an hour, but I reckon probably about 30 minutes. The idea, like Will said, is to give you a high level overview of what LiveAction does, but also talk about a lot of problems that all organizations of all size face and how we then help those organizations overcome those problems. What I'll do is I'll just turn off my camera because my Wi-Fi is a little bit funny today. Okay, so cool. All right, so one of the things that I want to talk about is why visibility of the network is so critical to a lot of organizations, all over the world really. And as organizations start to expand out, that issue becomes much, much larger within getting that visibility of the network. And it affects any type of organization pretty much, even the ones that are well known, have big budgets, and you would think would have everything that they need in order to get that visibility and to keep networks up and running. So I'll start firstly with a story, which is that back in September 2023, Volkswagen, who you would expect to have a large budget for networking and would have all of their ducks in a row, had a network outage that affected their vehicle production size. So this happened originally in Germany, and you can find this online. It had a major network outage. It caused production of all of the cars to just halt. And the important thing to know is that this affected the whole group. It includes Porsche, it includes Audi, because it's obviously Volkswagen Audi. And they spent a lot of time initially running around trying to find the problem. They couldn't isolate or understand where the problem was originating from, so they had to go and investigate this issue. They said that they had an unspecified IT malfunction of network components at a site in Germany, which is its global headquarters. They then realized that this outage started to affect other sites in Germany, Emden, Osnabrück, Hanover, Dresden, all these other places. And the minute that network stopped, it was tools down. You got to remember that this is operational technology. So there are robots working, there are people working, there are machines working, and everything is backed off onto the network. So the minute this stopped, you've still got electricity, lighting bills to pay, you've got staff to pay, you've got back orders of stuff coming through. And the minute that network went down, that was it, everything ceased. Now, they did, and a lot of people on this call will probably be thinking, well, it's probably a cyber attack. However, that wasn't the case. They reckon that an external attack was very unlikely to be the cause, and that they were adding those efforts to fix the problem, and highest priority, they needed to get this back up and running. Another news outlet reported that it was one of the worst IT crises in the automaker's history. Production had been disrupted not only in Germany, but then started to impact China and the US and other places. So this issue started to spread. Now, the cause of the problem was actually an application, and this application then got restarted, but everything halted for about 24 hours. Within that 24 hours, their share price dropped by 1.2%, which you would think is not that much of an impact. It's still an impact, right? But it's not that much of an impact. But that's 24 hours to drop 1.2%. But if you look at Gartner, in all their infinite wisdom, believe that the average network downtime costs around about $5,600 a minute, Well, take that with a little bit of pinch of salt, I would guess. But in 24 hours, there's 1,440 minutes. And if you use that sum, it costs around $8 million just from this outage. Now, VW never said how much it cost them. I don't think you could even quantify it. And you can't quantify it because of the potential brand damage. How many people were waiting for their Volkswagen and then got that delivery pushed back? How many people turned around and said, you know what, I'm going to move away from Volkswagen, I'm going to go buy a BMW or a VW or a Mercedes or whatever it might be, right? And then when you're at a dinner table with a load of friends and people are saying, hey, what happened to your car? I thought you were getting a VW. No, you know, big issue, they push back, blah, blah, blah. Don't buy a Volkswagen, etc., etc., right? So there's a big, big impact to this. But I would estimate that the cost was probably half that. I would say probably about $4 million at a general guess. Now, it's not just Volkswagen. There are a lot of other organizations out there that suffer from impacts on the network. And just back in April last year, Virgin Media had a big problem within their network. It affected the reachability of Virgin UK network and its services, right, to thousands of customers. AWS had a big issue, a wide-ranging outage impacting a load of major websites. The Network 3, again, I think they when they went down, it impacted about 13,000 users, right? And then Microsoft as well, who you would think would have the network, pretty much figured out. They had a big issue just January last year around Office 365 applications. And what they actually suffered from was high levels of packet loss across the network. So VW are not alone. And I'm pretty confident that most of the people on here know an organization that has suffered an outage of some description. And the reason for this is that if you look at a traditional network, and this is a very slimmed down version, but it helps explain my point. When there is an issue within the network, what tends to happen is network engineers run around with their heads on fire. They try to find what is the needle in the haystack. Where is the problem coming from? Where is it originating from? And if you ask a lot of network engineers, they don't often find the problem, but it just resolves itself, which is great in the short term. However, you're not then learning from that experience and then putting the necessary steps in place to prevent it from happening again. So generally speaking, if there's an issue in the network, you may end up going to the firewall, which in this example is Fortinet. I'm going to log on to FortiMonitor. I'm not going to log on to it because I need a security guy. I need someone who's available, who is working, who is security cleared, who has an understanding of FortiMonitor. I need my security guy. He's probably going to turn around and say, hey, it's not me, everything's fine. It's the network. Because what tends to happen is you have the network team blaming the security team, and vice versa. So maybe it's not with the firewall, maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe the customer's using Cisco vManage, they've got some Cisco switches. Again, it's not the security guy that's going to need to go to vManage, it's going to be a networking engineer. And that engineer needs to be available, it needs to be able to understand vManage and understand if the issue is coming with this particular switch, which may not be in the same data center as they're located, so they would need to access the other data center. But most customers don't just have Cisco completely, they will have a mixture of different things. The old Juniper switch here that has never suffered a problem, so why replace it? And again, I can't see Cisco from Fortinet or FortiMonitor. I can't see my Juniper switch from the Cisco admin console. So I need to then log on to Juniper. And you can see as this problem starts to expand out into things like routers, into things like applications, and applications like Volkswagen suffered from. It's not just the application. It's also talking about bandwidth. What about the device that the application is actually installed on? Is it a configuration problem, right? There's a ton of different things where most organizations have to run around exploring and trying to find the problem, which is why Volkswagen suffered an outage of just 24 hours. And it was enough to halt the entire production, and they had no preventative measures in place. Once you start then adding things like the cloud, the problem just becomes much, much larger and much wider. Office 365, Microsoft themselves suffered from packet loss there, which brought the service down. You know, AWS, same thing. They suffered an issue. Salesforce, all these different things. Is it the cloud applications? Is it the infrastructure that maybe that I have in the cloud that is affecting the problem? How do I then find this issue? And this is where LiveAction comes into play. But to understand the problem, really, when you speak to a lot of organizations, they're just using way too many different tools. They're using Cisco, Fortinet, they're using maybe a few NPM tools that can't see everything. All these tools are not designed to work with one another, so you can't jump from one to the other or have a single pane glass view, and they're all managed by different people and different skill sets. And then, as we all know in the industry, there's a massive skill shortage. So it's very difficult to find these engineers to pull them into the business to then learn about these different tools. As we know, it takes way too long to identify the issues. And then carrying on from that is actually addressing these issues and resolving the problem. We call this the mean time to resolution, or the mean time to innocence. The network guys want to turn around and actively say, it's not me, it's security, right? And it's those guys, because I can prove to you that everything in the network is running fine, but you need to check the firewalls. This then obviously leads to extended network downtimes. Poor customer experience, brand damage, share price drop in terms of VW, this profit loss, all this other stuff that everyone wants to avoid. A lot of organizations, especially organizations that we talk to, are moving to SD-WAN and they're adopting SD-WAN. Now, planning for the capacity around SD-WAN is a very, very long process. It's a long process for any consultancies or partners that are involved in this process, because you need to understand how many switches, routers, firewalls, bandwidth, all these different locations in all these different places in order to really scope out SD-WAN. So by adopting something like LiveAction, you can actually reduce that time massively, which is beneficial not just to partners, but to the customers as well. And again, if you look at Gartner, $5,600 a minute, pinch of salt with that. But I would say that it's probably half that number potentially, depending on the type of business that is impacted by it. But they reckon that on average, an enterprise organization will go down, or the network will go down for 87 hours per year. So this is a total of $29 million, which is a vast sum of money to be losing just from having a network outage. Now, I said that a lot of organizations, it's dependent on the impact in terms of how much money it costs. But if you look at Amazon, they suffered a network outage just for 49 minutes, and they reported that it cost them $5 million. Now, I'll stress that this actually happened nearly 11 years ago. Amazon is a much different company now. So if they suffered the same 49-minute outage, how much would it be? It wouldn't be 5 million. I'm sure it'd be a lot more than that. And people would be up in arms, right? Especially my wife. So who is LiveAction, and why are we talking about this, and how do we know about this, and where have we come from? So back in 2006, we actually won a tender for the Department of Defense. The DoD, who's still a customer today, wanted to be able to have network visibility regardless of the location, regardless of the vendor that they were using, regardless of the device type, and they wanted a single pane glass view. And they wanted it very, very visual, and they wanted it very easy to use. And we designed a solution purely to fit those parameters. In 2012, DoD was our only customer, but at that point we decided to commercialize the product. We went and sought investment, and we wanted to put that investment back into the solution and make it better. So in 2014, Cisco actually came in and invested in the company. And then 2016, Insight Partners, who I'm sure a lot of you guys will know, actually invested as well. So Insight Partners now, I think, hold the majority share. We've made a few acquisitions along the way, Living Objects, Savius for packet capture and stuff like that, and also Counterflow AI, just to bolster the solutions and to expand them out and provide more features and functionality. So what does LiveAction do? Well, we are an enterprise network intelligence platform, but what does that actually mean? What we do is we provide 3 different solutions which are designed to work together. So you have LiveNX, which is part of or is network visibility, virtual cloud or physical. where we intercept flow, APIs, SNMP, cloud traffic in order to paint a picture for the customers that are using it, in order to give them visibility of what is going on within the network at that specific time. And then we have LiveWire for network forensics, so packet capture and analysis. And then we also have ThreatEye as well. So that's ThreatEye is network detection and response. This is a solution that pulls packets from LiveWire and then can be utilized to send to the Security Operations Center or to integrate into things like Splunk, StealthWatch, or whatever it might be in terms of SIEM tools where an investigation can occur. Now, all of these solutions are designed and integrated with one another. So you can go from Live and X and jump into LiveWire, for example, and start investigating further. How do we help? So what we do is we provide a single pane glass view, completely vendor agnostic. Again, doesn't matter on the device type, whether it's firewalls, routers, switches, whatever it might be. And we provide visibility across the entire network. So again, it doesn't matter where those networks are located geographically either. So we're helping that customer by providing intelligence so that they can eliminate those network blind spots. They can focus on those performance issues, where are those issues resonating from or originating from, and then how do we resolve those issues. We help organizations understand that performance. So the customer will then provide themselves their own SLAs. For example, if there's a latency between this firewall and this router or this switch or whatever, if it drops below a certain threshold, then we'll change the color of that as a very visual and easy way to understand using traffic light systems. So green is good, orange is a warning, red is really, really bad. You need to do something about that. So we're taking a much more proactive approach and providing that to the customer based on the parameters that they outline. It's not for us to tell them what the right latency requirements should be, right? It's down to the customer. We provide them with the visibility tool. And then we provide very actionable insights to reduce that mean time to resolution or mean time to innocence. So you can actually play back in time and everything is recorded, so you can see exactly what's happened during the life cycle of that communication or that traffic. So you can actually replay it and go, actually, I want to look at what happened a week ago so that I can learn from this and understand that maybe a firewall rule was changed over here, or maybe we had a power outage and that's had a knock-on effect and caused an issue. And I can go back in time and actually replay that as it went through the hours and days and weeks and months. One of the reasons why customers choose LiveAction is the way that we present that data. It's very, very easy to understand. It's very logical, and everything is widget based. So most people, most customers will have this first top left enterprise visibility view in their NOC or Networks Operations Center, where they will see colors changing in kind of real time, green, orange, red, as things happen within that network. So from this main screen here, you can actually zoom straight in and go almost down to Street View, like Google Street View, and understand exactly what's going on. So we start here at the enterprise visibility on the top left, and then as we kind of go along, we can zoom in a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and understand. And then finally, we can go all the way down to that packet level or packet layer to understand if packets have been dropped, lost, or whatever it might be. So a lot of financial organizations use packet analysis. They need to have it for compliancy reasons. They need to be able to prove that they've been capturing packets and what happened and where they went, if they were lost or dropped or whatever it might be. So everything is customizable for the customer. Anyone can go and just create widgets, and I'll zoom in to this one for a second. This one here. So everything is kind of widget based, and each one of these widgets is actually a report. So you can actually create these reports, set them out so that they get sent to customers or to end users or the relevant person within the organization on a regular basis. And each one of these is a report that you can bring up or adjust or have as a widget on that view. So it's been designed with massive amounts of usability and also to be very, very visual and very clear. There's a number of different use cases as to why customers choose LiveAction. So cloud monitoring is one. SD-WAN is a big one. So when customers are deploying or planning for SD-WAN, what we can do is actually deploy the LiveAction solution in their environment. We don't need to install any agents on the end devices or anything like that. We put a few network probes within the network, which then starts to build that network out. And we can even pull up things like device health as well, so on certain devices, which will show CPU utilization, RAM usage, and all that other stuff as well. Application performance monitoring. So applications are a big problem for a lot of organizations now. The question always comes up, is it the application, is it the device, is it the bandwidth? So a lot of organizations purchase LiveAction to understand which one is it. Is it the app? Is it the bandwidth? Is it the device? And we actually have, we use a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to predict bandwidth consumption. So we can show bandwidth consumption within the solution, but we can also show what the predictability of that bandwidth consumption will be over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, so that customers can actually plan. A lot of organizations have actually saved money just reducing their lease line costs, because it's surprising how many people don't understand how much bandwidth they're actually consuming in the network. A big one is voice and video optimization. It's a massive part of our business. Organizations need to understand, how much bandwidth is being consumed, what the application is doing when things like Zoom, big call centers and things like that are using it, and everyone's had it. You're speaking to someone on the phone and they sound like a robot. What is the reason behind that? Is it due to latency? Is it the handset? What is it? So what we're doing is providing this intelligence so that the customer knows exactly where they need to go and what they need to fix at that moment in time. Wi-Fi diagnostics as well is a big one for us, and so is WAN capacity planning, like we said. So a lot of organizations trust LiveAction. Every vendor's got a slide like this, right? Everyone's seen this type of thing before. The interesting one for me is for customers like Aruba or NetApp or even Cisco themselves, right? Where they're using some form of LiveAction within their environment in order to bolster their network visibility. But there's a number of customers on here. A lot of people will know things like Costco or Santander and these sorts of people. So very US centric slide, this one, I fully appreciate. We do have a number of customers in the UK as well, obviously, and all the way across Europe. We actually, and I mentioned it earlier, that a lot of customers save money on reducing their lease line costs. And what we wanted to do was understand fully customers of LiveAction, the amount of money that they actually save by deploying the solution, because budgets are constrained. People aren't adopting as much technology as they used to. A lot of budget goes towards things like cybersecurity and stuff like that, which is absolutely relevant. But when customers deploy LiveAction, they actually see a return on their investment of 153%, and they actually pay for our solution in the first 12 months of owning it, which is staggering. There's not a lot of solutions out there that can actually say that. And this happens because of that reduction in mean time to resolution. So identify the problem, fix the problem. Streamlining that report generation. So because our solution can be automated in the sense of report generation. So for example, if something happens within a data center, I can then integrate with things like ServiceNow to raise a ticket that goes to the relevant person who manages that device or that set of devices within that data center location, to flag it to him as an urgent critical thing. So someone hasn't got to be there to actually click the button and send the email or pick up the phone and call the person, right? So we reduce a lot of those manual processes by automating a lot of the functions. There's always going to be a massive amount of increased business productivity. If the network is up, people are making widgets, they're selling things, they're building things, in the case of Volkswagen, cars are being made, right? The minute that network goes down, that's when the impact happens. Business productivity stopped, but you're still, as a business, paying to have the lights on. So keeping that network up is going to keep those things flowing through, and it's going to keep revenue being generated. And then the large one that we found, which I was quite surprised with, was avoided equipment and bandwidth costs. So obviously we talked about lease line and reducing that lease line cost, but one of the things that I never really thought about was that reduction in the equipment cost. So for example, if a customer is complaining that the switch keeps falling over, it could be that they've got a multitude of different switches, but their traffic is filtering through one. So by using LiveAction, you could actually determine and say, well, actually, if I pointed it to this other switch, I would unburden this other one, and therefore wouldn't need to spend tens of thousands of pounds on a nice, fancy, brand new switch that I necessarily don't really need. So it's about creating a smarter network and more efficient network for the customer and saving them money. Now, one question that always comes up, and I hear this from everybody, is, hang on, this looks like Cisco Thousand Eyes. Don't they do this? Well, no. As we discussed, Cisco is an investor in the organization. They obviously bought Thousand Eyes. They've spent a large amount of time and energy integrating Thousand Eyes into their product portfolio. And Thousand Eyes is a fantastic product, but we do not compete with it. What we do is we see real traffic in real time. So we are looking at everything the customer owns: switches, firewalls, routers, all that sort of stuff. And then we are in real time helping the customer to understand why device flow, why there is congestion forming in this part of the network at this moment in time. Thousand Eyes is a little bit different. So Thousand Eyes is generally for application performance. They're using synthetic testing. It's not generally real data. And it's more about, if I have an application outside of my network and I want it to traverse the network and connect to this endpoint or this device or whatever, what's a logical route that I should take based on congestion within the network? Now, this is really important. It's great for planning. It's great for understanding what the correct route should be within that network. However, networks change over time. So if I ran this test today, but I ran it again tomorrow, I would probably get two different answers, right? Both equally important solutions. I would suggest ours is more important, but I would say that they're both important, and they both make or form part of that, what we call that full observability stack, which is that full visibility of the entirety of the network. We have a number of different integrations with a lot of different organizations. So Cisco being a main one, we have some very, very key integrations with Cisco, Fortinet SD-WAN, Gigamon, Paolo, with their specific integrations that we have with those companies, ServiceNow, as I said earlier. But we essentially work with any vendor, and we help any organization to get that visibility, regardless of what they're using. So we can integrate with anything. We're and completely vendor agnostic, but we have some very key and very cool specific integrations with some of these different vendors here. So short and sweet, I wanted to make sure that everyone has enough time to actually eat their lunch and not listen to me waffle on. I will talk about one other thing, which is, a lot of our audience today will be partners. So it's important to understand that LiveAction is a 100% channel company. There's no exception to this rule, right? I've been in the industry, nearly 16, 17 years, right? So I know that when an organization sometimes says they're 100%, they're 98, 99, they'll take an order from HSBC because they need to or whatever. We're not like that. We're 100% channel orientated and focused. Every order has to go through a partner in the international team, which is everywhere outside the US and Canada. We provide really, really good margins and discounts. We do a lot of the heavy lifting for partners as well. So we're not expecting partners to be fully trained from a technical aspect, at least initially, unless they want to be. If they do want to be technically trained and they want to be able to run their own POCs, their own demos, they want to be able to charge for servicing and all that sort of stuff, great. We provide free technical training for partners and technical resources. But a lot of the time what we do is we find that we want partners to open the door to your customers so we can help these customers to understand this network issues that they all suffer from. And therefore, we'll do the presenting, we'll do the POCs, we'll do the demos and all that sort of stuff for the partner. What we're looking for is a partner to essentially bring opportunities to us so that we can work together and close those deals. So we provide things like deal registration and all that sort of stuff as well. So that's everything that I've got on here, but if you have any questions, please feel free. Will, don't know if we have any questions.
Yeah, no, I don't think we've got anything at the minute. I suppose the only thing that might be relevant for people is the kind of who you typically compete with, just while we're closing out.
Yeah, so there's a number of different solutions and different vendors. I think every sector and every different tool like network visibility or cyber is incredibly crowded. I would say we typically compete with the likes of SolarWinds and people like that on occasion. They tend to be more SMB, mid-market focused, at least from what we've seen. We tend to be much more mid-market all the way to high enterprise with kind of infinite scalability. We also find, sometimes as Riverbed, sometimes as NetScout and these other guys, we tend to be a lot easier to quote. So for example, there are 2 line items for LiveAction, our visibility solution. It's an engine and a per device cost. That's it. You look at a familiar one with someone like a NetScout, you're probably talking 15 to 25 different SKUs. It can be incredibly complicated and confusing, not just for partners, but for customers as well, right? So we're very simplistic, but we generally are more cost effective than a lot of those solutions as well. So we tend to not really lose all those many deals to those types of guys.
Perfect. And what would be your average deal size, would you say, when you're coming up on a LiveAction opportunity?
Oh, it's a difficult one really, because we have some big ticket customers that have spent millions with us, but I would say on average it's anywhere between $75,000 to maybe $150,000 on an annual recurring revenue basis. But again, it's completely wide. We recently sold to a 60-user organization because they wanted to understand bandwidth consumption, and that was the only thing that they wanted. Although they got the entire product, that was the only use case that they had that they wanted to address. So we can service any size customer really.
I don't think we've got any more questions kind of coming in, but what I would say, if there's anybody who doesn't kind of want to ask them out loud, just to reach out to either myself or Luke. We'll make sure that on the follow-up that our details are there, and we'll also share a copy of the recording as well. So we're kind of there if you do have any questions or just want to understand if there's a potential fit with some of your use cases.
I would also say that really the power in the solution is getting customers to see it. Once customers see the solution, they have a technical demo, they start to work out different use cases. So I actually went and met with a large power or energy grids provider in Central Eastern Europe. And we sat down and presented to him, and he turned around and said, "Are you able to help us understand bandwidth consumption?" We said, "Yes, we are." He said, "Great, I want a POC." And I said, "Well, that was very, very quick. It doesn't normally happen that fast." And he said, "Well, the reason is because my cybersecurity counterpart has this really fancy network, 5G network, that I want to be able to get some of the bandwidth out of. And every time I ask him, there's just never enough." And he says, "No, I want to prove that wrong." So there's an absolute ton of use cases, and every single time we present it to a customer or to a specific team, they end up saying, "Actually, I know that John over there in a different team has actually suffered from a problem that this would actually help solve." So getting customers onto a demo is definitely the best first step, so they can actually understand exactly what we do. It's hard to do it on a presentation like this to show the true power of the solution. So I would fully recommend, booking a demo or a demo initially with us, and then proof of concepts, because generally speaking, we don't ship hardware or anything like that. It's not really a requirement. So it's very easy for us to stand up a proof of concept within the customer's environment very quickly, and they can see the true power in a very fast way.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Luke. But yeah, we'll give everybody a little bit of time back in the day. Thanks for everybody that's attended. Obviously, anybody who qualifies, we'll make sure you get over the lunch voucher. But appreciate your time, and we'll speak to everybody later.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.